Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Asher Marketing Podcast. And tonight, we have a very special guest, Asher's president, Kara Kelly. Hi, Kara.
Hi, Anthony. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you would think, as Asher's president, we would have had you on earlier than 6.
Nah.
But we let things get warmed up, and we figured out what we're actually doing with this, which we still don't quite know, but we'll find out tonight what we're doing with this. So the year 2020 has been quite a year.
Remarkable.
Yes, but it's almost over. So what are you looking forward to in the next couple months? What's coming up that you're eager to see happen?
Personally or professionally?
A little bit of both. Other than the year ending, what's on your mind? What's coming up?
Personally, I am looking forward to a dive trip to a little island off of Honduras in January.
Am I correct that your husband and you are both certified scuba divers? Is that true?
So actually, that is not true. Okay. My husband is not a very good swimmer.
Okay.
And so he
Sorry,
said that,
Mike.
Sorry, Mike. He said that he's going to go to the island and become a 3-toed sloth.
Okay, good.
While I am out swimming with fish. So I'm looking forward to that personally, just an escape from it all.
Where are you going?
A little island off of Honduras.
Nice.
If they let us in.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if we're allowed there. But so, yeah. And then professionally, is there such thing as stability? I don't know.
I don't know.
I kind of forget what that feels like. So yeah, professionally, stability, personally, an escape, swimming with a fish.
All right. Well, good. Well, and Mike, if you're listening, and I know you will be because you love your wife, we will not get you in the water.
No.
We'll keep you safe on land.
Keep you on the boat.
That's right. So, Kara, as you know, on this podcast, we talk about really 3 things. Mm-hmm. Your career path, your organization, which it's a chance to talk about what your perception is of Asher Agency, and then projects that you're working on, things you're excited about, and that can take any form at all. So let's start with your career path. And I'm going to make believe I don't know as much about you as I do. But I always tell people, start at the beginning, whatever that means to you. And for you, I know you grew up in Fort Wayne, so maybe take us from that point onward to what your career path has looked like and how you ended up as the president of Asher.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit like Lombard Street, if you will. I stopped, I smelled the flowers, I looked out at the ocean. But yeah, born and raised in Fort Wayne, south side of town in the 07, represent, and a bit of a mutt. Public elementary, magnet middle school, and private high school, and went on to a Catholic college over in Ohio. And it's just funny how things all work out the way they should, if you will. I swam growing up, and so therefore my first job was lifeguarding. I went to school for PR and marketing, but throughout college I was out in California, a waterfront director at a kids camp. And that was awesome, a great kind of, I guess, I'm always looking to travel and escape. That might be a common theme coming up here.
So did you go to California just because you wanted to go to California, or was it the job, or what brought you there?
Yeah, so I was in school in the Midwest. I'd been lifeguarding here in Fort Wayne, and I knew that during the summers I wanted to go on an adventure. Yeah. So I explored different camps around the U.S., and there is still a children's camp. It's the first original co-ed camp in the world.
Oh, wow.
It's called Kennelin. It's in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I may have told you this, but it's a glamp. So, which is my kind of camping, I guess. Yeah. They have cabins with doors and restrooms. I stood on the hill next to George Lucas. His son Jet was his name, with 2 T's. Went to the camp, Vanna White, I don't know, her son. But there are kids from all over the Bay Area that go there, and all over the world, really. They attract counselors from all over the world, just try and broaden people's perspectives. And anyway, so I went there throughout college, and it was the senior year of high school. I know I'm dating myself here, but season finale of 90210, and we were drinking a lot of cheap champagne, my girlfriends and I put our hands in the middle of the table, and we promised to each other we're going to move to California.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I know this town's called Santa Cruz. And so, my friends hadn't been west of the Mississippi, and got in our cars and all went out to California and got a house together with a lemon tree and eucalyptus trees, and we moved west.
So completely different world than Indiana.
Very much so.
So what was your first impression of Santa Cruz?
It's a surf town. I lived
Let's go there right now. That sounds great.
It's amazing. I tried to make ends meet and would work at restaurants.
Yeah.
still love that restaurant, Cafe Cruz. And so on Fridays, I'd go and try to surf with some girlfriends. And so it was just a totally different lifestyle. Ramen noodles, cheap beer, not a care in the world.
Yeah. So how do you get from counselor at a camp to marketing? How do you make that leap?
Yep. So I met this gal, Sherry Boxer Baker, owned a boutique PR agency in the Bay Area, and she showed me the ropes. Being a small shop, I touched every aspect of that business, and she still to this day is such an inspiration to me. And so she brought me into the PR world, and I was out there. It's the Bay Area. It was high stress, a long commute, give or take, literally 10-minute window. It could be an hour and a half commute or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Living on the ocean, commuting to Silicon Valley.
Yeah, wow.
So realized that it was great. I learned a lot of different aspects of whether it was real estate or nonprofit or the arts community, whatever it may be. But then I told my parents, I said, I think I'm ready to come home to a more affordable place of living. And so again, just things work out strangely. I came home for a wedding, and Tom Borney, as you all probably know, our CEO, Tom interviewed me for a position to work on the Subway account. And so during the wedding, one weekend whirlwind, interviewed. I was already in the process of realizing I was going to pack up, and I told my parents, well, before I plant roots, I kind of want to go to Europe and just travel.
Yeah.
And they said, well, why don't you get a job over there?
Yeah.
And so I did that camp. There's connections and threads. The founder of the camp I worked at in California started a camp on the shores of Croatia called Camp California.
Okay.
And it's where European children came to learn English, but do that in the environment where they're learning to rope climb and play baseball. They don't know baseball in Eastern Europe. So I was there for a summer, and I came home, and I took a quick stint over at BNY and worked on Vera Bradley and Biomet and some accounts there. While all of this happened, that job opportunity at Asher unfortunately didn't come to fruition.
Yeah.
We were pitching the Baltimore market and didn't win the business. So therefore that opportunity wasn't waiting for me when I got home. But 1 year later, Tim and Tom reached out and said, hey, that opportunity is back on the table for the Baltimore subway market. Would you be interested in coming over? And I'll never forget, I went and asked my dad to meet me for a drink at Henry's and got a cocktail. And I said, Dad, I don't know what to do. I've been at BNY for a year, but this sounds exciting. And he's like, take a chance.
Yeah.
And so I did, and ended up growing our Subway business. At that point, when I came over to Asher, which was 15 years ago, we had 13 Subway markets and grew it to 63.
Wow. So one question to close the loop. What did you study when you were because you were at University of Dayton.
Yeah.
And what did you study there?
PR and marketing.
Okay. So it's consistent with what you ended up doing.
Yeah.
There's so many people that I talk to that they take a completely different path than what they studied, but it sounds like you were prepared for a career in that direction. So how many years ago was it that you started at Asher?
15.
Okay. All right. So I'm 16, you're 15. Because I remember it wasn't too long after I started.
Yep.
So let's talk about your role now at Asher, because you and take me through. You're working on Subway. You're growing the Subway business. You're working with the franchise team. How does it evolve over the past few years to your current role? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that. Knowing that Tim was ready to transition out, our founder, and his brother Tom was taking over the reins, when Tim became ill, I think Tom just had an awakening of life is precious, it's short, I need to identify my exit strategy. And Tom had seen, I was essentially running an agency within an agency with Subway. And he saw how I managed the business, managed the people, and I guess he thought that I had the chops for this. And so it was 3 years ago where I was made president of the agency.
Yeah. Yeah, and Asher has changed quite a bit over the years, but still a good core of folks that you've worked with over the years. Some new folks who are great too. But it's in my mind it's a good situation because you have a lot of known quantities and a lot of strong folks who've been around for a while. So and I'm going to go off the script a little bit. and talk a little bit about you as a young woman leading a company, which is, I think, a great thing for Asher. But talk about your experience as a woman in business and connecting with other women in similar roles. Still in our community a little bit rare, but becoming less so. How do you feel about that? And is it a point of pride for you? Is it something that you don't think about all that much?
I don't know how this will come across, but
that's the fun of a podcast.
Yeah. I forget that I'm a woman. And I mean that in the sense that I do not walk into a room intimidated by a group of men.
Yeah.
I just will step right up. I'm not shy to raise my hand. And so, again, I don't know how that comes across, but I'm very proud of the fact that we have a lot of female leadership at Asher, and I'm just grateful for the fact that Tom saw an opportunity and something in me to think that I could take this on. But I don't think it has any, I hope it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the fact that I'm a woman.
Yeah.
It's the skill set.
Yeah, I suspect it doesn't. It's more a coincidence. But, I know Asher has been recognized in the past with I believe it was an Athena Award, and, has done some pretty good things as far as helping women progress in the workplace, which it's a point of pride for me working here.
Yeah.
But obviously, as a guy, it doesn't affect me directly. So it's always interesting for me to hear that perspective from someone else.
I was nominated again. I'm humbled by it as a champion of change here in the community. One of maybe 12 other folks for empowering women.
Yeah.
And so it's something that sometimes you take a pause and it's like, oh yeah.
We're
doing something.
Yeah, and it is a business where, I'm in the minority as a male, and I think it's great for some of our younger women to have a mentor, someone who's leading the company and they can look to and see your career path and see that there's, a chance of them doing the same someday. So I think that's great.
I know you're aware we have a new creative director that we've brought on board, and Jen Roberts. In the process of talking to a lot of just really exceptional people, Jen bubbled up. But one thing that I learned throughout that process, only 3% of creative directors across the U.S. are female.
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
Crazy?
Oh, well, that's cool. Well, good for us.
I know, right?
Yeah. So, when you were a kid, did you ever think you'd be running a company, or was that just something not on your radar?
No, it's not anything I ever intentionally do, but little known fact, I was the president of the student council at my middle school.
Okay.
I was the president of the student council at my high school.
All right. So
and so I guess it's in the blood. I don't know.
Yeah. So, and didn't you intern like one day at Asher? Isn't there somewhere a photo of you holding like a party-sized sub, a Subway sub? Yeah.
One day I shadowed Tom Borney to figure out what I'm doing in my life. It's high school.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. And my dad he helped manage the Grand Wayne Center, a client of Asher for a long time. And so he's like, my buddy Tom Borney, go follow him. So I followed Tom around for a day. We went to a print shop, but they didn't have enough people. Subway was a client back then.
Yeah.
They didn't had enough people to hold this giant party sub for a threefold brochure we were doing. So I am standing there like a 16-year-old kid and talk about full circle.
We'll have to resurface that photo at some point.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, good. So let's talk about this place called Asher Agency. You've been here for 15 years.
Yeah.
If you asked me to describe it, I don't know what I would say. But how do you define when people ask you, what's Asher all about? And feel free to be expansive. This is the part of the program where you can go on and on. But how do you describe Asher to people?
I would describe Asher as a group of very authentic people. We shoot you straight. What you see is what you get. And we work incredibly hard. We have that Midwest work ethic, and we are also really relentless. I feel like oftentimes if someone tells us we can't get something done, we find a way to make it happen. So I think we have some of the best people. I'm so proud of the people that we have on our team. And that is what makes Asher. It's been a different year with a lot of folks being remote. I miss camaraderie. I know that we still will get together, whether it's virtual happy hour. But at the core of who we are, we're very authentic and transparent. And I think that in this business, to not have a bunch of BSers, I think that is such an asset. And because of that, the relationships that we develop with our clients and with each other as a team are so critically important. We almost become that extension of our clients. They become like family to us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It is definitely a people business, and we don't make a tangible product. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there's the creative product, of course, but it's more about the smart thinking and the people. And I'm biased, but I think we've got great people.
We do.
A lot of my job is staying out of the way and letting smart people do what they do.
Yep.
And, that's fun too. It's fun to think for a living and work with people who are super smart and can do the same thing.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that, when you look at points of pride or work that Asher's done that you're especially proud of? What are some things that come to mind over the years that you've worked at Asher?
Yeah. Let's see. Where do I begin? Well, one project that I was incredibly proud of was a Subway campaign, and it was called Georgia Grown. We represented the state of Georgia, and we partnered with their agricultural department.
Yeah.
And Georgia Grown is a branded entity in that region. And we highlighted farmers that grew produce for the Subway restaurants there. And it was just, it was really a beautiful thing to feature these farmers, support the local economy. It was sustainable living before sustainable living was cool. This campaign originated back in 2014, came to fruition finally in 2016. Talk about being relentless and not taking no for an answer. It was really challenging to work through the red tape. But then lo and behold, it became a point of pride for the Subway brand, and there started to be replications of this campaign around the country. And we've done a lot of really great work for this national brand that they picked up and started running nationally. One of our colleagues, Jeannie Otis, developed this initiative, and it was a team effort, but she led this charge. It was National Sandwich Day.
Yeah.
And it was down in a small market in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And it ended up being picked up nationally by
Wow.
Subway and going global.
Yeah.
And so we have turned out some really, really great work. And I know that I'm speaking a lot on the Subway topic because that's what I worked so closely with for so many years.
Yeah.
But there's just an incredible amount of great work that we do all across the board, from our web development to our digital and social media management. So I don't even know where to begin from creative perspectives.
I have the easy job. I just ask the questions when I sit back and listen to people answer. It's a big question.
It is. And, again, in the midst of COVID, we have just helped 2 startup companies roll out their brand in the face of the challenges of this economy. They have brought us on board to develop their branding, do their first media campaigns, develop their first media and broadcast. And so that's been really exciting to watch. And I mean, the clients are just ecstatic about it because, Well,
and we get to, if it's okay for me to say, I think one of them is Aurora Sleep.
Yeah.
Which, just great people. Dr. Green is just awesome. I love talking to that guy because he's, for those of you who don't know who Steve Green is, he was a former basketball player, played at IU, played for the Pacers. And I have to admit, when we were first as an agency introduced, I was a little bit intimidated. I was like, what's this guy going to be like? And he is the nicest guy you will ever meet.
He's so cool.
So, helping someone like that start a business is some of the most fun that I think we can ever have.
It really is. There's another startup over in the D.C. area. They've been around for a couple of years, but we helped them develop their first campaign. And it was a little risque. We even had to fight to get it on air. We were working with Comcast, and they're like, this is a little too much. So the concept and the premise of this brand out there is a weight loss initiative. Yeah. And so there was this guy, he had pixelation, and, he's prancing around very proud of his weight loss. And it was really tongue-in-cheek and funny. Well, Comcast was a little resistant to running it. And thanks to some hard work and diligence by our media team, we got it on air. Lo and behold, then you see Folgers doing plays on the Zoom meeting. You see all these plays on Zoom meetings and people being in underwear or whatever. And it's like, we got there first. It was cool.
Yeah, well, and you have to be a little bit provocative to cut through the clutter in today's environment, for sure. So another thing I want to hear your perspective on, you and I kind of both grew up at Asher under the Borney brothers. And I know that I find myself doing things that are 100% influenced by the way they ran the company and just the guys that Tim was and that Tom is. How much of an influence and how do you see that manifesting in yourself, if at all?
Well, again, I can't even tell you how much. I mean, I've had two significant mentors. I mentioned Sherry from the Bay Area and Tom, really. And it's about watching and learning and studying. And Tom, you always kind of had a good cop and bad cop with those guys.
Yeah,
and I love them both.
Yeah, I used to say that I could get anything I wanted. I just needed to decide when I came upstairs whether to take a left or a right.
Yes, it's true. They were the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah.
What a duo.
Yeah.
Yes. So you, I know, spent more time with Tim.
Yep.
I always spent more time with Tom. I mean, we would all spend time together. Such admiration. But yeah, Tom has taught me several things, but one is always listen.
Yeah.
And then out of the information that you have gleaned and harvested, pick out what you think is the best avenue to take. My dad and Tom both have told me, always remember there are three sides to every story. His, hers, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And so Tom has taught me to slow down, listen, and evaluate before making any knee-jerk decisions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's been my experience too. And with Tim, what Tim taught me is he would know when I was going to make a mistake, and as long as it wasn't a terminal mistake, he'd let me make it. And then he would tell me that I made it and tell me that he knew I was going to make it. And that has, I really have always appreciated the fact that our leadership, including you, has always tolerated mistakes. And I think that's especially since we hire people who are more junior in their careers, you have to do that. You have to give people, some latitude to try stuff and take risks. Not huge risks, not risks that are going to get them in trouble, but things that they need to learn on their own. And we move so fast that you got to kind of try stuff. And if it doesn't work, learn from that and move on.
Well, to that point, it's about empowerment. I mean, Tim and Tom, both of their leadership styles were not hovering over your shoulder and micromanaging everything that you do.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of the beauty that has really transcended across the generations here is that maybe it's scary because we tell people sink or swim. A lot of folks come in and we're like, all right, this is how you do it. And you're off.
Yeah.
But we let people learn and we empower them to take ownership.
Yeah, and we have again, you and I are both biased, let's admit it, but we have a pretty good track record of employee retention, and keeping people. Larry Wardlaw's been with Asher for how long?
We can't count.
We can't count. Jill's been here for 30 years. So we've got great people, and that autonomy and that lack of, scrutiny, I think, helps people, stick around, which is great. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your dad too, because you mentioned him a couple times, and Gary, I don't see him very often, but is a great guy, and I've always enjoyed being in the same room. Was he just he was just recognized with an award?
He was.
Is that right?
He was awarded the Circle of Corridon, which is one of the highest honors in the state for the impact that he made on the economy in Northeast Indiana. Yeah, I mean, my dad he's my buddy. He's, again, a mentor, a friend.
So how did he influence you as far as the role you're in now? What things can you see that you learned from him that maybe you're applying? Anything come to mind?
I feel like I reflect a lot of who my dad is. My parents both. But my dad is always so open to every walk of life. Right now, diversity is such a hot topic.
Yeah, sure.
And my parents just always taught me inclusiveness. And I've learned so much by watching him, the kindness that he puts into any situation, the thoughtfulness. I know we're in a podcast. I've never been asked that. I've never really summarized what all my dad and my parents have done to influence me. But they have always, like saying that I'm going to move to Europe in the year 2005. I mean, gosh, the war ended in 2000, and they're like, go on, Kara, why don't you get a job? I mean, they've always just encouraged me and believed in me. So it's awesome.
Yeah, well, great. Well, let's talk about stuff that you're working on and some of the things that are most exciting to you, most challenging to you, most interesting. What's on your mind in terms of projects, whether they're short-term things or long-term things?
It's really the recalibration, I think, of the agency is my most exciting focal point right now. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting across the table from you. It's everything. It's what I think about all the time. I help on projects periodically in regards to clients. I'll step in when I can and help when and where I can. But it's really the agency collectively as a whole that I'm most excited about, because everything in this world has shifted over the past, 8-9 months. And it's put a lot of things in a clearer perspective and vision. And so I'm just really excited about where we're going and who we're going to become. And by we, I mean myself too, along with this agency. So that is what really just inspires me right now. And I'm constantly, I'm in a couple different conversations and groups where I have other C-suite mentors, and just talking with them and learning from their mistakes and just how they've grown their companies throughout the years. I'm a student, constantly learning and reading and listening, and that's what excites me right now.
Yeah.
So
how would you define your leadership style, leadership philosophy? What do you try to bring to the table as far as like a consistent presence with all these smart people? What do you try to do from a leadership perspective?
I may have mentioned this a couple times, but I feel like I try and listen, and I try and help problem solve. And what kind of leadership style do I bring to the table? I hope it is one that isn't quick to judge, one that understands that if I walk into a room and there's a situation, it's all going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. And so I hope my leadership style is an open door policy, come in and chat about anything that's bothering you, and I mean that, I guess, both professionally and personally. But if there's an issue on any sort of project, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's solve it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So.
And it's a complex organization because we have folks, in West Virginia, we have folks in Indy, and it's gotten more complex over the last 7 months because we've been, distributed around the world and connecting with each other over video conference and over the phone, much more so than face to face. How have you dealt with that challenge? How are you dealing with the challenge of leading a team that is, virtual?
I try and pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And it is difficult. I love our Slack channels and things like that where GIFs are dropped and emojis are popping. And so trying to, it's strange though. I almost feel more connected to people now. And maybe that's because we're all in one building and people just get in a zone and sit in their office or whatever. But I feel like we have almost been forced, in a nice way, forced to communicate more.
Yeah.
And so I think picking up the phone is critical, though. You can't just hide behind, emails and emojis, but yeah.
Well, there's one thing that I've mentioned to other people. I don't know if you and I have talked about it, but I think this whole situation in a number of ways has brought like the humanity back to work. Mm-hmm. And I'll second that. One of the reasons I've stayed at Ashland for 16 years is you kind of get to be yourself. I mean, we've got folks who I don't think you always put on your work face, right? But I think most of our people, you get who they are when they're at work, and it's not very different than who they are at home. So I think we've always had that. But to me, it's a very different equation when, we're on a video conference and somebody's child runs by in the background. I kind of like that.
I love it.
There's a client of ours, a woman who works for Ivy Tech named Kelsey, and she, kind of purposefully puts her kids' drawings in the back of her Zoom meeting, which, if nothing else, it reminds me, okay, this is a whole person. She's got kids, she's got a family. This is just one facet of her life.
Yep.
And I think up until, at least for me, up until March of 2020, it was very easy to forget that. And you just thought of, this person who comes to work every day.
Yeah.
But it's kind of opened up a new window into our people's lives in a good way.
I mean, I'll be on the phone with Margaret, one of our colleagues. I'm like, hi, buddy. I'll hear the dog in the background. Or I'm on the phone with Tom, and I'm like, what's up, Dash? They're part of the fabric of who we are. Yeah. And it's so much more visible now. And I think we're all embracing that. I mean, personally, I was a diamond club, platinum, whatever level, the highest level you can get with Delta. And so talk about your world changing.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have fresh produce in the refrigerator.
Yeah. So how many miles did you travel last year or the year before?
I don't remember the miles, but I do remember that I I looked up the circumference of the earth, and I could have traveled it 5 times.
Oh, geez.
All on domestic flights.
And that's within a year?
That was 1 year.
Wow. So how many miles have you traveled this year?
Not many. Yeah. I would guess maybe 2,000. I had flown to LA once, and that was February.
Wow. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I kind of miss it. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, and I was just, sort of the obvious thing. There's a group I'm talking to tomorrow about change and the fact that none of us think we're good at it, but all of us have done it over the last 7 months. And, I have 20 plus years of my work life being getting in the car, going to an office, staying at the office for 8 hours. And I've done that, maybe 10 times since March. And now what's normal is going into my den and turning on the computer. And it's, you get used to it. It's different, but, I think it reminds us all how adaptable we are, for sure.
I just, in a really twisted way, I feel like I've been living my best life.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are a lot of sacrifices and there have been a lot of hardships and really sleepless nights, but I have solidified friendships and I've got to spend time with my parents and my dearest nieces and nephew and my husband. And I mean, there's so much joy that's been uncovered.
Because you and Mike have been married for 6 years now. So that's, it's still early on.
We're still in newlyweds.
And he didn't see much of you for the first 5 years. So good for you guys. That's great.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Got to find the silver lining.
So let me get at, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit in a good way. Talking about Asher, I'm going to throw out some names of some folks who we work with, and I want to kind of hear your perspective on them. And I'm going to do this just for fun because it's fun. I want to hear your thoughts on, you mentioned Margaret. Talk about Margaret Davidson. So Margaret used to be an Asher client when she was with the State Fair and has been with us for a number of years now, running our Indy office. What comes to mind when you think of Margaret?
Mile a minute. Margaret, I love you, girl, but mile a minute. She goes so fast, and she's phenomenal with the clients. Heart of gold, and she doesn't stop. Yeah. That's Margaret.
Yeah. I'll throw another name out. What about Steve Morrison?
Steve.
I'm going to focus on some of our folks who are, in the remote offices because they sometimes don't get enough love. So Steve, tell me about Steve Morrison.
Steve, just that Southern draw, kind gentleman. He is a wise owl. And I don't mean that in, he processes
He's the voice of
things.
reason.
He really is. Yeah. I love, bye, y'all. I don't know, at the end of every call, bye. Yeah. He's
got a pilot's voice.
He does.
Yeah. You trust him to land the plane.
Soothing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How about Mike Fulton?
Mike Fulton. Yeah. God, why I'm doing that? I'm like saying, with everybody.
You're stalling so you can think of what you want to say.
No, I'm not. I just hung up with Mike Fulton. We were just on the phone. Yeah. Oh, man. Mike Fulton. Mike Fulton is so smart, I don't even know what he does. Mike Fulton is out of our D.C. office, and he understands the algorithm of politics, and his brain works in a different stratosphere than mine. Yeah. And I love it. I love talking with him. I learn something every time.
Mike seems like a guy who is always connected to what's going on and connected to people in a way that's just astounding. It's like every time I bring up the name of a company, he knows someone who either knows someone or who works there, which is great.
And an exceptional author. He is always blogging and writing. I think he just had a book published. I mean, he's just,
Yeah. And let me throw out a couple names of some of your right-hand people. So talk to me about Megan Bennett. The financial side doesn't always get the attention, but...
My ride or die. Ride or die.
Yeah, Megan's been here and has, dealt with all the tumult of post-COVID or mid-COVID finance. So what do you think of when you think of Megan?
We have just so many amazing people here. I could not have gotten through this year without Megan.
Yeah.
I joke, ride or die, but truly she has helped be my sounding board and just talk through some of the most difficult times this year. And she has, as you might imagine, as a CFO, just such an analytical perspective. I joke with her that, I don't know which I am. I guess I'm probably the Mac. She's the PC. I'm the Democrat. She's a Republican.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have different approaches
Yeah.
to every problem, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and you need that, right? I mean, the one thing that I used to think earlier in my career that I had to know everything, and I didn't know anything, but I thought I had to know everything. And now I've gotten really comfortable at 51, being here 16 years, saying, these people are way smarter than I
Yep.
am. You know, what I can do is maybe assemble the right team, but man, those different perspectives are just critical.
Yeah, they are. I love that you said that. Originally thinking that you knew everything. I think it's important to walk into any situation and be like, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
You have to be open to different perspectives and
Yeah.
a different approach.
Yeah, we mentioned Tom earlier, and I think I learned this from both Tim and Tom, is they were very much, or are very much in Tom's case, from the Leaders Speak Last school. It's kind of
Yeah.
like let everyone else talk.
Yep.
And from sitting in meetings with me, I was always the first person to have an opinion. I've tried to get better at that, but that's certainly the influence of the Borney brothers
Yep.
shining through. What about Brandon Pete? Let's talk about Brandon Pete. The Pete who can't be beat.
Brandon Pete, little known fact.
Yeah.
Amazing voice.
That's what I've heard.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm Catholic, and I don't bring religion into a lot of things,
Sure.
but we went to Ash Wednesday Mass. Brandon, Emily Bartram, Megan Bennett, my husband Mike, and I mean, people were like looking down the pew, like, "Is that Pete singing over there?"
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Again, so the different stratosphere of thinking applies to Pete as well, but yet he speaks in layman's terms.
Yeah.
He makes it so digestible, whatever it is he's speaking from web.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and the thing that I think is not always known about Brandon, when he started here, he was a print designer and
Yeah.
was one of the best print designers I've ever worked with, is one of the best writers I've ever worked with, is, just super talented in a number of different ways.
Yep.
And, with his need to focus on web stuff, just astounding talent there. So just a phenomenal guy and a good singer, apparently.
And
so
a good singer.
Brandon, maybe someday you can serenade me in the morning and I will wake
Cantor.
and the birds will fly and it'll be beautiful. All right, so let's do this. What we usually, and anything else that is on your mind as far as projects, as far as things that are important to you that you're working on now, anything about Asher that you want to make sure you say, or have we covered it pretty well?
I think we've covered it pretty well. I just think that we have a group of people that works really well together. And, it's, you tag people in who you need, whether you need Brandon from the website or Dave from the digital side, or, we always will bring the right people to the party. And the fact
Yeah.
that we all work so well together, I think is really, it's just really important and something I'm really proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right about the collaboration. Like, I really have enjoyed being able to work with Jill Brown again.
Yeah.
And, because she's back in the office and we're working on stuff for a client. And it reminds you of how good the people are that you work with, which
Yeah.
is great.
Yep.
Okay. So what we do to close this out is we do a quick hit on the 3 questions we talked about, but sort of a now that you're kind of warmed up,
Yeah.
a shorter answer in a way. So career path-wise, let's say you were talking to someone who is entering, could be the agency world, could be the franchise world, it could be just someone starting out in their career. What's the one best piece of advice you have someone about establishing themselves in a career path and being successful, however you determine that?
I've mentioned listen a couple times, but it's critically important. Listen, observe, and do not be afraid to ask questions because that's the way you learn, but it shows your interest level. It shows your eagerness. So I would listen and ask questions would be my top advice, if you will.
Okay. All right. So this is going to be a challenge because you've already given a good short answer to it. But if somebody stopped you on the street and said, you've got 30 seconds. What's Asher Agency all about? What would you say?
Great work, good people,
Okay.
I think would be the nutshell. And yeah, what else would I say? Elevator speech, outside of things that I haven't already said. That we can help them solve their problems.
Yeah.
Let us uncover and discover what's going on and what is troubling them, and let us help you solve it. Because if we can't do it, we'll find you the right people who can.
Yeah.
We're not so proud here that we will help you with your solutions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and the one thing that if you don't mind, I'll add to that is we've got really super service-oriented folks. I mean, the one thing that I like is when the phone rings, people rush toward the phone, not away from the phone.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of like almost too eager to help sometimes. I don't know that, maybe I'm not saying that well, but no question. I remember there was a story, and I want to give a shout out to Sean O'Leary and Caitlin Judkins, who's no longer an Asher employee, but I remember a client called us and they needed a photo shoot, and literally like within 36 hours they wanted a photo shoot done. And the photo shoot started at 6 a.m. And I remember. We all have challenges delegating. I'm pretty good at it, though. Pretty good at getting stuff off my plate. By the way, thank you for taking the thing I delegated upward to you today.
Yep.
But I was super reluctant in this case because I was like, this is 6 a.m. And Sean just was like, oh, this sounds awesome. Love to do it. And Caitlin was right there with him. So, when I say too eager, it's with humility that people are just really great about solving the problem, regardless of what time of day they have to get out of bed or what time they get home. So, yeah. All right. Last short question. So this has been a challenging time for a lot of people who do the work we do and beyond. There's a lot of people who are struggling with how do I do this? How do I adapt? How do I keep my business afloat? If you were, conspiring with someone about those problems, what would you say that might make them feel a little bit better?
I would say stay true to yourself and don't lose sight of your strengths and your areas of expertise, because it's been just a really clouded time and everything seems just uprooted, and it's really important to stay focused on who you are. And I mean that at every level, as businesses, as individuals. Yes, you have to keep your eyes wide open that some things may be shifting, and so there may be some adaptation, but all with that intention of staying true. So that's, I think, what I would say. I would also say that it's going to get better. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we can get through this, we can get through anything. Yeah. And you have to find that silver lining, being here and working with people that maybe we hadn't had an opportunity to work with as much recently, or there's that silver lining, and it's only going to get better. Yeah,
and I've always said that the one thing 2020 has given me that maybe I didn't have enough of in the past is gratitude. It's like now if I wake up, I'm like, okay, am I healthy? Are the people I care about healthy? And am I still getting a paycheck? If I can check those three things off, I mean, with all honesty, you should be feel very fortunate if you're in that position in 2020. And, I wish I had that perspective 10 years ago. I don't like how I've gotten that perspective, but it certainly is, it makes you approach the world a little differently when you have that gratitude.
It has shifted and refocused me on work-life balance. Yeah. I remember you used to, when I was living down in Raleigh, open an office for Asher down there. You would always just coach me and be like, Kara, just one thing at a time, you need to take care of you. Mm-hmm. And I've mentioned Sherry now a couple times in this, but she said, Kara, you always have to put on your, life mask first before you help anybody else if you're sitting on a plane. But it reminds you of that work-life balance, the priority of friends, of family, of loved ones, and just that, yes, work is critically important, but it's not everything.
Yeah, it's not. And, we're fortunate to work with people who are interesting outside of work, who have full lives, who do, charitable work in the community, who have fun hobbies and, all kinds of cool stuff that just makes them a lot of fun to work with.
I know.
Yeah. Well, you, my friend, are very fun to work with. And this was great. Ditto. It was fun. I always learn something new about people, even people I've worked with for 15 years. Yeah. So thanks for talking. I appreciate you doing it. And
Thank you.
I would say good luck, but we have the same kind of luck that we're in this boat together. So
we are.
We'll just keep moving. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode. I hope you appreciated hearing from Kara as much as I did. We'll be back next week with another episode, and we hope to see you then. Thanks.